Hi all, welcome to my YouTube channel Project MIS and thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Samit Kumar Ambastha and here I am again with this video to talk about on Scrum ceremonies. Before we continue, let's first understand what I had covered in my previous video, that was on Agile methodology and various Scrum framework and Scrum events, Scrum team and artifacts. And then we went inside on each of these items, further insight to talk about and learn in a detailed point of view. After completing this video, now this video is in continuation to talk about Scrum ceremonies. So for Scrum framework, there are four Scrum ceremonies we perform, starting from sprint planning, which we do before we start the sprint. During the sprint, we do daily Scrum on a daily basis, and when the sprint gets over, we do sprint review, and after that, we perform sprint retrospective. So these are the four ceremonies. We'll be going through each one of these one by one to talk about and learn little detailed about all these ceremonies. After this video, the next video I will be covering how we will be implementing these ceremonies in Jira, like Atlassian Jira, in that software, how we can run on a day-to-day basis. The virtual run will perform in my next video. So let's start with the conceptual understanding of Scrum ceremonies in this video, one by one. So let's start with the sprint planning. So sprint planning is the first Scrum ceremony which we perform before we start the sprint so that we can prepare ourselves for a sprint. Okay, so we are starting with sprint planning. I have made a slide to talk about each of the Scrum ceremonies and the required detail for each of these. So I'll be talking about sprint planning now. So the first basic thing is to understand is the time box duration. Sprint planning. The time box duration which is decided for sprint planning is 8 hours for 4 weeks of sprint. So we all know that, like, in the Scrum, the allowed duration for sprint is 1 week to 4 weeks. It can be 1 week, 2, 3, or 4 weeks. So if we are going for max, like, time box duration, which is 4 weeks, then we should be spending 8 hours for sprint planning. But 2 hours of 2 weeks of sprint is the most common sprint cadence, which is quite popular. So if we are going for 2 weeks of a sprint, then we should be ideally spending 4 hours in sprint planning, which is more than sufficient to plan for a sprint. Okay. The what is the basic idea in sprint planning? The basic idea in sprint planning is to prepare ourselves before we start the sprint. So how we prepare ourselves? So first thing we have to understand when we perform sprint planning, whether in person meeting or in a call. So there are number of stakeholders which should be part of this meeting. So I have made some legends here: a Scrum team, a Scrum master, product owner, and a stakeholder. So if you match with the legend, so what we understand in sprint planning meeting, we should be having Scrum team, Scrum master, and product owner. So these three people should be part of the meeting to perform the sprint planning. Now the key activity on sprint planning starts with product owner, because product owner is the person who has spoken to customer to understand the requirement and write down the basic level of user stories which can communicate the objective of the product. So to make it easy and understandable for us, and how actually it is being implemented in production environment, in the real time environment, let's split this sprint planning activity in two different parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1, PO presents sprint goal and discuss the team. So when we are having the call, product owner will be talking about all the objective of the overall development, and based on his understanding, with his communication with the customer, he will be prioritizing what he wants to develop in the next sprint. So product owner is free to decide based on the communication and prioritization what should be the activities or user stories which should be picked up in sprint 1. What is important, along with picking the user story, the 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 message has to be communicated to developer so that developer can understand that what is exactly we are going to do. That message is very important. Second point says per priority select the product backlog item for the sprint. Means product owner has written down the list of requirement what is required to develop the software. It can be like 50 stories, it can be 100 stories, but all stories cannot be picked up in the coming sprint, right? So in one sprint a certain story can be delivered. Let's assume out of 100 we are delivering 20 stories. So based on the prioritization what is important to be delivered, to deliver first, product owner will choose those 20 set of stories, that these 20 set of stories will be delivered in the next sprint, and those 20 story will be called sprint backlog for the sprint. So product owner presented the goal and communicated the objective of the sprint, that what is that we are going to develop. He will choose the list of stories which has to be delivered based on the priority, and whatever user stories are chosen based on the priority will form the sprint backlog. That is part 1. Product owner has communicated the message, selected the user story, and created the sprint backlog. Now part 2 says team breaks user stories into subtasks. Now part 1, assume part 1 user story says I have to develop one user screen to enter user details, where user can enter their personal details, name, address, for example. So that is the one functional story. Okay, but when developers are working on that story, they cannot work on that story just single handedly. That story has to be divided based on the function. So to perform that activity, first you have to make one database which should have all the field with name, roll number, city, address, whatever it is. Then the someone has to create the the user screen design, and then after that someone has to do the coding so that uh, the designed uh, UX screen will be popped up onto the screen, and then user will type in the data, then the data will be saved into the database, so that coding will be there. So basically three level of activity team has to perform. So developers will understand from product owner, okay, I have to develop this screen where I need to take input from user and save the data into the database. But now based on the requirement, developers will split that story into three tasks. So one task will assign to one developer who will create the database. Second subtask will be assigned to the another developer who will design the screen. And after that, third part of subtask will be assigned to the third person who will be delivering the code to take the input in the designed UX and save into the database. So that part will be done in the second part, and each subtask will be estimated with effort. So if development of this screen needs 8 hours of time, and when we are splitting this main user story into smaller subtasks which can be uh, create database, design UX screen, and then uh, derive the coding to integrate this user screen and the database on the screen. So out of 8 hours, how much hours for database activity, how much hours for UX screen activity, how much hours for coding activity. That estimate and effort you have to provide in the respective subtask. So that I will show you in my next video, that how we estimate efforts in Jira and how we track the progress, and how many hours are estimated, how many hours are spent, and then how many effort is required to complete the story. Those part will be seeing in practical in Jira. But that is what the concept. So let's quickly refresh these points. Part one says product owner has to communicate the sprint goal and talk about it with the team so team can understand what is exactly we want to deliver based on the priority and the importance of the user story which needs to be delivered in the coming sprint. Product owner will choose the list of stories which can be delivered in the sprint, which will form a sprint backlog. Then part two, then team will be discussing that user story into the perspective of development, and they will break down the story into various subtasks. It can be one, two, three, or many as well, based on the story and based on the requirement which needs to be done. And then that subtask will be assigned to the respective people who will be working on those subtasks, and each of the subtasks will be estimated with effort, so you know how much time on each of these subtasks should be spent. So that is very very clear in terms of understanding by when we can expect which task will be closed. So this part of activity is called sprint planning. I hope you are clear with this. If you have any doubt, any question which you want to clarify, you can write down comments in the video, and I'll try my best to help you guys with the answer. Now let's move to the next Scrum ceremony. Daily Scrum. Daily Scrum is a very simple Scrum ceremony, and this is very important in terms of maintaining the key value of Scrum, which is the transparency. So, time box duration for daily Scrum is 15 minutes. So, it means from the first day of the sprint, when we are starting the sprint, till we complete the sprint, every day we should be spending 15 minutes per day for daily Scrum ceremony. So it's a regular team connect kind of call where we will be talking on a very very focused agenda. So when I say it is focused, so it has to be very very specific in terms of what we should be talking about in this particular call. Before we discuss what is do's and what is don'ts, let's understand who all should be part of this call. Okay, so as per the legend, we see Scrum team, Scrum master, and product owner. These three people should be part of this call. But normally, I have seen in the real world, in the corporate world, or in any like most of the other companies also, product owner mostly they do not join these calls on a day-to-day basis because they have so much other stuff to perform. So mostly, this call happens between Scrum Master and Scrum team. Okay, one important thing here, this call is not organized to share the status update to Scrum Master or product owner. The purpose of this call is for the whole team to understand what is going on with the sprint, whether it is product owner, Scrum Master, or even the development team, Scrum team. The Scrum team has 5 members, so all 5 members should know who is doing what and what is happening with the sprint. It is just not a status update to a Scrum Master. This is very important, and this there will be some questions if you go to attend certification for product owner or Scrum Master. This point also will be definitely covered in some form in your exam. Do's and don'ts. What we should be talking about in this particular call, daily Scrum. So we should be very focused. If I am giving the update as a developer, I should be talking about what I did yesterday. So it communicates, what I have completed yesterday. What will I do today? So it will communicate the message to the team that what I am going to work upon today. and any impediments. If I have any blocker, like which is not letting me complete my task, any kind of configuration issue, any kind of dependency where I need some clarification, any system issue, or whatever it is, any kind of impediment, that I should be calling out in this meeting. So I should not spend more time talking about my particular update. I should be very, very straightforward. These are the things I have done yesterday. These are the things which I will be doing today. And if I have any issue, I can talk about it. Otherwise, say I'm fine. I don't have any impediment or any blocker. Don'ts is important because as per human nature, we get influenced and we are habituated to talk on these lines, which we should not be talking. Otherwise, we cannot maintain the time box duration of 15 minutes. What we should not do, we should not go for problem solving. Problem can be there. If the problem is not there with me, it can be with others. But whoever is having problem, Scrum Master should note down the problem and just move ahead. And then later he should be speaking to that particular developer or person and work on to figure out the solution for the problem. But right there in the call, we should not be progressing for solution. No technical discussion. If you go for technical discussion, you cannot maintain 15 minutes of time. If you go for technical discussion, it can be relevant for one person to go into that in depth for technical discussion, but will be waste for others time. So we don't have to go for technical discussion until and unless it is required for whole team to discuss together. Do not be late. The time box duration itself is 15 minutes. So definitely we should maintain this 15 minutes of timeline and we should not be late. If in this 15 minutes also, if I join after 5 minutes, so definitely I will be missing out on the first 5 minutes, which is almost 33% of the call duration. So who all have given the update, I will not be having any clue what happened. So it's imperative for us to join daily scrum on time and finish on time. Okay, so that's in brief. Let's review daily scrum. 15 minutes is the time box duration. Scrum team, scrum master, product owner should join the call. Do's, we should talk about what I did yesterday, what will I do today, and if there are any blocker or impediment, I can talk about it. If not, fine. Don'ts, what we should not be doing, we should not be going for problem solution, solving the problem during the call. We should not be indulged in technical discussion during the call, and we should not be late. We should maintain the timelines. Join on time, leave on time. That's about daily scrum. Sprint review, the third scrum ceremony. Sprint review. First, let's start with the people who should be joining this sprint review call. So, as per legend, you can see Scrum team, Scrum master, product owner, and stakeholders. Who are stakeholders? Stakeholders are all those interested people who are having good amount of interest in the product development for the product what we are doing the development. It can be direct customer, it can be the senior management people who are somehow involved in this development. So these people are very very eager to wait for this sprint review call just to see how far we have progressed, because this is very important call for them, because they have regular on a regular basis they have various management call where they have to talk about the development, and if they see on their own what all features are developed and how we are progressing, it's very very satisfactory, and it's very very comfort for them to talk about the development instead of just seeing the update from someone in a written format and talk about it. When they see the review, they are very very confident when they have to talk about it to any of the stakeholder in their any management meeting. So sprint review meeting is very very important. It is the call, it is the ceremony where we get opportunity to showcase the work whatever we have done during the sprint. The time box duration for this sprint review ceremony is 4 hours for 4 weeks of sprint. So if the sprint cadence is 4 weeks, so ideally it is expected that sprint review will take 4 hours of time. But ideally if you talk about demo, it does not take that much time. But if you are maintaining a sprint cadence of 2 weeks, then ideally mathematically it says we should be spending 2 hours. That itself is good enough to show the sprint review demo. Okay, and how the demo will be run, let's see one by one. Last day of the sprint. So if I am starting the sprint on day one and it is a 2 week of sprint, so first week 5 days will go off and second week another 5 days will go off. So last week of the sprint will be the sprint review date. Whenever you are starting the sprint and whenever the 10th day is coming, on that particular day, you should be having a sprint review call. It can be in person if everyone is there available at one place. It can be over call if people are scattered across different geographic location. Second point, team to demo working software. Team to demo working software. Like, so this is nothing but like, whatever development has been done. So someone has to share their screen, run the application, and show what all development has been done. But before we do the development, we have to give some summary, like that this is the sprint objective we started with. These are the list of story which the whole team has worked during the time of sprint, and then we go and show the working software demo. So this will give them the opportunity to connect with the expectation and the delivery, and then based on that we should be noting down the feedback. How feedback will be absorbed for the development or the correction, that needs to be discussed and has to be taken care of based on the work required for to cover the feedback. No two slides, only working software demo. I should not be preparing one slide where I talk about, okay, this is the sprint goal, and then this is these many user story we started working with, and this is what, like we have completed. This is what in progress. This is what we have to start working. Nothing like that. No PPT, no slide, no document, no Word document, no Excel report, nothing. Only one thing should talk about in a sprint review, and that is working software. So someone from development team should share their screen, should run the application, and should show that what are features we have worked upon and how they are performing on system. No incomplete stories. It is not expected that whatever user stories are picked up during the sprint planning, any of those user stories are not completed, and even half completed user story we are picking up to show the demo. Not at all expected. We should never do that. Agile never recommend that. Whatever user stories we have planned, whatever happened, we have to deliver that. We should not be changing the objective of the sprint. So this has to be make sure that we are completing all the story and no half baked stuff are presented during the review call. Okay. Last one, development team to demonstrate working software. The similar stuff, right? Working software. But here we are specifying specifically that development team has to demonstrate. Why development team? When I say development team, it is the Scrum team. Why? Because stakeholder, they are completely unaware what is happening on the system. Product owner has talked about the objective, but he does not know how coding happens. Scrum Master is the facilitator who is facilitating all the ceremonies, all the calls, but actually he is also not the developer who is actually developing the software. Developers, which is Scrum team. So it is the expectation that development team should demonstrate working software because there is no one better than development team who can share the screen and show the demo. So this is about sprint review. In brief, let's review sprint review. Time box duration 4 hours for 4 weeks of sprint, and then who all should be attending this call: Scrum team member, Scrum master, product owner, and stakeholder. It can be customer and the other senior stakeholders who are involved with any scope of interest for this product development. When it happens, last day of the sprint, and team has to demo working software. No documentation, no slides, only software has to be presented and demo has to be shown. No incomplete story. There should not be any story presented during the sprint review which is not completed. If it is not completed, it should not be part of a sprint review. But at the same time, also we must note that it is not expected that we are not able to complete the user story which is part of a sprint planning. If there is some deviation, some emergency is there, it has to be planned. But we should not be facing that situation where we are not able to complete the story. Development team to demonstrate working software. So Scrum team, someone from the development team. If there is a tech lead can come ahead, or else other developers also can take the opportunity and share their screen and demonstrate the working software. That's all about sprint review. If you have any doubt, any question which you want to add in the video, or if you have any clarification which you want to give, or if you need me to give clarification for any of the point, please maintain the write down the comment and I will come back on that. Now we are at the final Scrum ceremony, sprint retrospective. Sprint retrospective, what is the time box duration? 3 hours for 4 weeks of sprint. So actually, mathematically this will not work. I personally I have experienced whether we are following 4 weeks of a sprint cycle or 2 weeks of a sprint cycle, for retrospective the time required will be same. It is not like it will vary based on the duration of the sprint. So how a sprint retrospective will work? Okay, so what is the timeline we have to maintain? Time box duration maximum 3 hours for 4 weeks of sprint. Who all will be part of this sprint retrospective? Mostly Scrum team and Scrum Master, because they are the people who are involved on to day-to-day basis for the development work. So any process improvement, any better way of doing the thing has to be discussed among between these people. Now, what is the objective of sprint retrospective? The overall objective of sprint retrospective is to introspect our own work, and from that work discuss with each other and figure out what is the better way of doing the things. That is the ultimate objective of sprint retrospective. And to make it structured, how we do, we have to discuss these points like one by one among the group. What went well? So everyone from the team, Scrum Master and the team member, Scrum team member, they can talk about what went well. So this is something like talk about the positive which they have experienced. So that is the guideline or hint for us to maintain the same thing in the upcoming sprint. What did not work well? So this is like some kind of message for us where we can take those pointers and we can figure out how we can make changes to make the improvement for that particular piece of work so that we can do better. And then what can be done differently, so that is the solution oriented approach. So first we discuss what is good, second we discuss what is not going good, and then whatever is not going good we will agree, like some specific approach so that we can improve on that. So that is what we have to discuss in a sprint retrospective. Okay, so if you talk about this looks like it's just like we all are coming together and discussing in general, but at the same time you have to make it structured. And to save the time, what I have experienced in my real life scenarios, I so how it works. Okay, so when in Jira, when you are running the sprint, and when the sprint gets over and you get the approval to close the sprint, so the moment you close the sprint in Jira will automatically create one page which will be for sprint retrospective. Okay, and under that sprint retrospective page you will be having these three key pointer only. First, we'll talk about what went well, and second, we'll talk about what did not work well, and third, we'll talk about what can be done differently. So, what is the action point, like to improve on our way of working. So, what I have experienced, I used to make one uh, confluence page with the, like 3 or 4 column table along with serial number, and with the specific line item for each of the team member. So they can, like before they get onto this call they can write before joining the call their first, second and third point item. So what happens when we get onto the call, we directly discuss on those pointer only with the team member. So that time we don't have to be, we have to brainstorm with the team to think and write something, because when we get onto the call we have something which is already written by the team and we just talk about it. So it saves time also, and at the same time it looks very very structured also. So what went well, everyone has written. Let's talk about all these points. What did not work well, let's discuss those pointer which is given by everyone and talk about it and understand this. This part may take little longer during the discussion. And then what can be done differently, so this is the action point which comes from what did not work well mostly. So here, the whole group you have to talk about and agree some action point which should be implemented in the upcoming sprint, so that we can overcome these deficiencies whatever we have highlighted. So that is the objective. Now who is responsible to make sure that the action points, whatever action points are agreed, are noted somewhere, are communicated to the team member, communicated to the product owner, and communicated to internal stakeholders, so that they are aware about sprint retrospective outcome. And at the same time, it is responsibility of a scrum master to make sure those action points are worked upon and are being implemented on a day-to-day practice. So that's what is the objective of sprint retrospective. In brief, if we review sprint retrospective, the maximum time box duration should be 3 hours for 4 weeks of sprint. And who all should join this sprint retrospective? Scrum team and Scrum master. And they all should be talking about what went well, what did not work well, and then what can be done differently to improve the process, which is the action point to overcome the second pointer, what did not work well, so that that action point can be worked upon by the team. And scrum master can make a note of that and can ensure that those action points are actioned and implemented in the working behavior of the team, so that we can improve on that. So that's all about sprint retrospective. So now we have covered sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, and a sprint retrospective. So this is how we complete the Scrum ceremonies. In my next video, I will be taking one example. So first I will be writing will first we will create one product backlog, then we will convert that into a sprint backlog, and after that we will take one story and we will see how developers needs to uh, create subtasks for each of those stories and how they will estimate and maintain the effort for those subtasks. And after that we will see how we will how we can maintain daily scrum, how we can perform daily scrum, and how we do that in Jira. And then when the 10th day is over, demo will be done, and what action we have to take on Jira, that we will see. And after the sprint review is done, we get the approval, we close the sprint, then how we can perform a sprint retrospective. So this is all in a virtual way, like we will see how this can be implemented in Jira. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this should help you in understanding Scrum ceremony. If you have any question on any of the Scrum ceremony or related topic, you please drop a comment and I will revert on that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much.